Hello, world, and welcome to the Innovation Coaching Podcast. My name is Klaus Rostel, and with me today I have Stacy Drake. And Stacy, tell me how I can help.
Well, thanks for having me on here. It's nice to meet you too. I'm seeing the Batman in the background. So that's awesome. Makes me feel very comfortable. I have a business partner and we are starting from scratch. I've never had my own business, never done that, gone down that route. And it's for coaching and it's for business development. And, how do you use design thinking when you're applying that to your business strategy, to a nonprofit, to your life for professional development, and kind of getting that hands on. So I'm at the basis now of how do we structure fees? How do I get clients? I don't want to do the roundabout cold reach on, social media. I feel like I want to have the idea of abundance where they're coming to me because I portray the value that they're looking for. I need help figuring out how to communicate that.
Got it. Got it. Excellent. So, first question, and this is a very, very relevant entrepreneur question, especially when you're starting out. How long is the runway? How much time do you have for this experiment before it needs to make or break?
Find like hour wide, how much do I have time per like week?
No, and I'm glad you asked that way because it shows that you have a day job.
Yes, I do. I have a full-time day job and a family.
The smart entrepreneurs are the ones who have day jobs and try out something, and then if it works, then they try to transition to full time.
Yes, absolutely. That's where I'm at.
The smart and desperate entrepreneurs are sometimes the ones who say, we're going all in, and if we're not making money in 3 months, then we're closing it down. The really desperate entrepreneurs are the ones who say, we're doing this and I have no plan B. So you're one of the smart ones. That's good.
Thank you.
And the reason I ask that is that that gives you a huge advantage because it means you don't have a deadline for when it starts to need to make money, when it has to do that. You don't have to have made 50,000 in 6 months. You just, if you can get this to work, yes. If not, then you can try again tomorrow. Correct?
Absolutely. And it's very purpose driven for me. It aligns with my values. So even if it doesn't make millions of dollars, of course I want it to. I want to be able to donate that, time, full time and make that my life. But if it doesn't, it's still fulfilling beginning stages of maybe it doesn't make X amount of money. I don't have those kind of goals in mind.
Excellent.
Maybe I should. So maybe that's it. Maybe that's a mind shift that I need to have is maybe set some financial goals. But at the end of the day, I know that my full-time career in education, that's kind of my bread.
So I'd actually advise you to not do that, to don't set some goals.
Okay.
Because if you are purpose driven, right now you're doing it because you want to, you think it will impact lives, it'll make a difference, it'll make you feel
Yes.
good, it'll save the world, all that sort of thing, which is great. And if you start putting a money value on that, then suddenly that's going to become important. And a lot of people, a lot of entrepreneurs start out and they need to, right? They need to pay the rent or it needs to, they have only 12 months of runway or funding or whatever. So they need to have a financial goal. But the most successful ones are generally the ones who say, once I stop worrying about the money, then it came by itself.
Yep.
And that sounds a little bit cliche, a little bit crappy. And I've found a way to translate it is that if you're trying to lose weight, let's say you're trying to lose weight, I'm doing that at the moment, so I can relate to that. If you're trying to lose weight and you're doing it by saying, I need to lose 5 pounds or 10 kilos or whatever it is before this date. Well, yes, then it's clear and then you have a goal. But what happens if it doesn't go well? What happens when you're sick a week? What happens when it's hard? What happens when you need to prioritize your ill sister or you need to do extra shifts at work? All these sorts of things that get in the way. Then suddenly it just becomes harder.
Yeah.
Where if you're exercising, whether you're running or playing basketball or swimming or whatever it is, the things that cause weight loss, if you're doing or eating more healthily, if you do that because you want to do that,
Exactly.
then the weight loss is a secondary effect of that. And that makes it much, much better.
That makes sense.
But it means when it's hard, then you're not focused on the goal, you're focused on the activity.
Yes. That makes it. And that's kind of what my coaching model is. I've done several coaching models and like had coaches before. And the one that I strive to is be, do, have, because I don't want to focus on activity or behavior. I want to focus on my belief system. What are my values? Because if I uphold that, it doesn't matter what's going on in my life or in the world around me intrinsically. I know I'm going to choose that. And that's how it like impacts my behavior and the choices I make. But also, I like that you pointed out that if you have that approach, that hill turns into a mountain. If you start with, I have to have X amount by this day. I do a lot of trauma informed care in my career. And there's a pathogenic approach, which is the black and white, what is wrong, what's going on. And there's shame and judgment in that. And so coaching for me is salutogenic, it's holistic, and it starts with the belief systems.
Bingo. And it's, we can use this right now. We're on a coaching podcast, so we can use this as an example. If I had made this podcast and said, I want 1 million listeners in 6 months, or even I want 1,000, right? It doesn't matter what the number is. 1,000 is easier than 1 million, but it doesn't matter.
Yes.
If I said, I want 1,000 listeners or 1 million listeners, and if I don't get that, then I'm failing. And if I get that, then I'm succeeding. That means that there are a lot of things outside my control for that, where what I instead said for this podcast is, as long as there are people who are willing to be coached by me on the podcast, then it is working.
Yes.
Now, the moment I run out of people who are willing to be coached on the podcast, then I have a problem. Yes, it would be nice if Brad Pitt comes and pays me $500,000 for a coaching session and billions of people can listen, and that would be great. But that's a cherry on top.
Well, if that ever happens, make sure you're sharing, share this episode, please. Thank you.
Yes, then I'll get some listeners for that, right? But the core is, do I get to have conversations where I get to help people, and are there people who want help, and are they willing to share? And if I can do that, then the podcast is a success. And if it makes money, if it gets me clients, if it becomes famous, if it inspires people, all of that is a bonus. But the core is just two people on a call having a conversation. And the rest is a cherry on top. And that means the odds of this podcast, my podcast at least, failing for me are very, very low. Where if I'd said I need 1,000 listeners, or it needs to generate 6 coaching clients per month, or it needs to give me speaking, whatever the kind of the spin-offs. If I said that is the goal and that is what I measure, then it's very easy to fail. It's very easy for it to be a hard, long struggle if it goes badly. We're here, as long as I enjoy doing this, which I really do, and as long as people say we enjoy it as well, then it's a success, and everything else is just a bonus. And I think if you can, there are many places in our life where we cannot stick to that mindset because we need to pay rent, and kids need shoes, and it would be nice to go to France once in a while, or maybe even eat something, right? There's all these nice things that money can buy, and if we don't have it, then we need to make compromises. But if you're already doing that in a different space, you're already doing that in your day job, it means that you can afford to do your entrepreneurship the way you want it done. And that means you can go out and say, I'm going to do coaching. I only coach trauma, people who have trauma responses they want help to. I charge $500 an hour, and I only do it on Thursday. Well, you might not get a lot of customers. But if you don't, then you're like, okay, well, nobody wanted that. That's fine. I'm still happy. I still have my day job. The kids still get fed. I still do things that's meaningful because I've covered that elsewhere. Like, then it turns from being your money maker to your art. And art tends to be much nicer as an artistic process if you're not worried about selling it. The moment you start to do art to sell, it is more tricky. You can still do it, but it's more tricky. Where if you do art for its own sake, then that's a really nice way to do art. And if you can stick to that entrepreneurship as art, then I think you're going to have a much nicer journey, and also probably going to be much better at showing the world what the offer is, what you're doing, what's the value, blah, 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 all the nice stuff, the money business stuff, but it's going to come indirectly instead of being the main function. So I'd say the longer you can stick to that, do it.
Absolutely. That makes sense. One of the mind blocks that I had was I felt like I didn't have the freedom to do what I want to do with this. But you kind of change that perspective where absolutely you do, because you're the one in charge of when it happens, how it happens. So I needed that. Thank you for clarifying that in my mind. Because it's easy for me to need to apply the same coaching that I give. So even though I'm a coach and I consider myself an empowerment person to help others and help businesses grow, I need to coach myself. So I think that's a lot of the mentality of you offering coaching is coaches need coaches. That's kind of cliche to say too, but yeah, absolutely.
Sure, and I do, right? I have people coaching me, and then they say, "Klaus, have you considered this?" And I say, "Oh, no, no, I hadn't. Oh, damn." So excellent on that. Okay, so that's one thing that I think is going to make it easier. Let's jump past that. Now you know you have the freedom, and you don't have to settle because you're choosing this. You're not forced to. Let's talk more about the actual business. Tell me about
Okay. It's called By Design.
it. Mm-hmm.
And I like the name because it's you're creating your business, you're creating your life, you're creating your personal life, your professional life by design.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that you do is purpose driven. It's not reacting to what's around you, you're responding to life, and you're the one in the driver's seat. And I really like that when you allow people to go through that mind shift of it's not the behavior, it's not the action, it's what do you believe, what do you want? And then you start making those small steps of what is an action I take today? And that builds momentum and it just keeps driving forward. So that's kind of the mentality of what are the values? What do you need to happen? And using the OKR approach of what are your objectives? What are your key results? And applying that to whether it's your life, your personal life, professional, your business, and then making your actions every day drive the most impactful work you can. Um, a lot of businesses, a lot of life, even myself, get caught up in the reaction of life. So I mean, even just your basic email, you could live in your email inbox for 3 hours a day, but it's that impactful. You're just reacting. What is the most impactful things you can do every day? They may be small, they might be small steps, but how do you lead that to the bigger picture? I think a lot of individuals and a lot of entrepreneurs have this big picture that they want to reach to, and they see it and it's a mountain. Well, how do we break that mountain down into steps so that you can see a pathway to where you want to go and align your actions every day with that? And you start feeling fulfilled. You start feeling like you're making a difference, whether it's in your life or whatever your goal is. That's the idea that drives By Design.
Got it. I like that. I like the idea of the design life. I have a friend, an ex-Disney illustrator who's a very talented artist, Dave Zabosky, who was the first person I heard talk about the created life,
Yes.
right? And it could have been called the design life. It's just because he's a little bit more spiritual and artistic, but it's the same thing. It's saying, instead of saying, I do this because that's how it's done, saying, I do this because I choose to.
Exactly.
Whether it's when you put your kids to bed, or do you even have kids, or do you have a job, or where do you live? What do you do? All these sorts of things. It's that you don't have to wear shoes. Most of us do because it's smart, but you don't have to, right? That sort of thing. I love that. So a thought on that, and I ran across this the other day. I was at a leadership conference and I heard one of the speakers, I think he was Swedish or Norwegian, Hans something. And he talked about, and this really stuck with me. He talked about, if you ask questions of how do we get there, or will this happen, or what is it possible, then it's easy to get stuck. And what he said, instead of asking those questions, if you say, you're now there, how did you get there? Then you get a different mind space, right? If you say, let's say right now I say, so Stacy, in a year, you're going to have 10 paying clients. How did you get there? And it doesn't mean there's only one answer, but it means that suddenly you're not saying, oh, but I'm not going to get 10 clients, or I want 50, or I want one, or I don't think I can get more than 8, or all these sorts of, you're not questioning the outcome. You're saying, what if the outcome was already true?
Absolutely.
What are potential paths to get there, right?
Yes. And one of the activities that I like to start with any client that we're going to have is I want you to write yourself a letter or write down your goals as if they have already happened.
Yes.
And that's what you're going to, it starts that mindset of like abundance, and there's science behind it, because your brain literally seeks out and will resonate with what you want and what you're seeking. And if you're seeking, oh my gosh, I need to have X amount of clients, or oh my gosh, whatever that goal is, that mountain, if you're seeing the mountain all the time, you're going to see roadblocks. But if you are in that mindset and you see, like you said, as if it's already happened, your brain, you will psychologically, subconsciously pick up on the opportunities because you don't see roadblocks, you see pathways.
Yes, and it may still fail, right? It may still go to hell.
Yeah, yeah. It seemed like fail. It might be the wrong one. It's like a maze.
There's at least a chance. And what struck me, he gave this example. He asked the audience, we were like a couple of thousand people in the audiences. He said, how many of you think that the Swiss National Railways will have been, a majority of their stock will have been bought by Chinese investors in 3 years? And then most people in the room, of course, say, no, we don't see that as happening. But say, okay, now imagine in 3 years, the Swiss Railways have a majority of that ownership has been taken over by Chinese investors. What was the path that led there? Talk with your neighbor about that. And suddenly there were thousands of conversations, which were wildly different, but all about what pathways could have led up that mountain. So spotting potential pathways from that fake up sometimes makes it easier when like, oh, wait a minute, now I see the pathway from the other side. And I guess the question here is, let's do that for a moment. That's fun. And you do it already. How did you get to, in a year, how did you get to the first 10 paying coaching clients? What's one path that could have led there? We're not saying it's the only one. We're not saying it's going to work, but what's one path that could have led there?
Right. Yeah. Starting with one client and having, putting my time and really not seeing it as this needs to turn into a financial gain. This needs to do, like, I'm not going to control the outcome. I know what I want, but allowing that time to build what is it and how do I interact with this individual so that I'm meeting them at a level where I'm their partner in the coaching process. I'm not shaming them or saying your behavior is bad. I think that's kind of difficult. There's that connection piece that has to happen. And in order for me to get 10 clients or to reach that goal is I need to better understand the actual coaching process.
Sure.
Because I've coached friends and family, but having a stranger, share intrinsically what are your goals, what's stopping you, because we all have that mask on of everything's fine and I'm reaching my goals, and that's what society kind of tells us how to act. So a pathway would be learning on how to have that conversation and start and show that value of how my approach is unique, because you're not going to feel that shame. We're going to look at it from that salutogenic instead of pathogenic approach. And from that, there's value, there's communication. They share their story, they have this success. And that alone is going to attract other individuals in that same energy of, yes, that's what I'm looking for. And that's how it'd get up to 10 clients, is that would share, that would spread. And that's hopefully that's the way it would happen.
Definitely, right? And let's take that for a moment and say that 20 minutes ago, you talked about starting a business, right? With your business partner. And now we're talking about you need to get one client who says, okay, to being coached by you, and they don't even have to have a good experience with it, because it's not the end goal. If you're terrible the first time, you're going to get better the second time, and you're not going to be terrible. You're going to be great. But even if you're terrible, you're still going to learn, and you're going to be better the second time, the third, the fifth, etc. And since you don't have financial goals that have a deadline to them, you don't need to get paid. So right now, the task has gone from building a business to finding one person who's not a family member or a close friend who says yes to spending 45 minutes or an hour or 1.5 hours, whatever your format, whatever you like, basically getting advice from you. And that is hard, but that's a completely different problem, right? Because starting a business and building a business, that's a big, huge, crazy thing.
It
And who
is.
knows where it goes. And let me get back to packing some lunches. Right?
Economy and numbers, and yes.
Yeah. Where finding one person for one coaching session, basically finding one semi-stranger who is willing to share their trouble with you and listen to what you have to say. They don't have to do it. They don't have to like it even. They don't even have to like you. It's a plus if they do, but right now that's not even needed. So the goal is right now to find that one person who wants to have one conversation. And suddenly that seems a little bit more doable, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I can think in my head of at least 3 individuals that I would like to try that with.
Bingo.
Another struggle I think I have is on that same line of, here's individuals you can coach and you're kind of trying it out. What happens when it becomes I want to put a monetary amount on my time,
Mhm.
or I want to charge for clients. And I've been in that predicament where I really needed a certain program that matched with me. I clicked with the coach, but their price was, in my perspective of where I was insane,
Yes.
where I couldn't move forward with them. So how do I find that balance of what's the monetary amount to charge for coaching so that it's accessible, it's equitable? Because I have that philanthropist mindset, but still not devaluing my time if I wanted to grow it monetarily. What is that process?
So there are many ways of approaching this. Now we get to like the nitty-gritty money stuff. There are many ways of approaching this. The first is by buying the book on pricing expertise that I've written with Philip Fuchik. No, don't worry about that. I'll send it to you as a gift.
Oh, I'm literally about to write it down.
It might, no. It's a 560 euro book, so I don't want to force you to buy it, but I'll send it to you as a gift
Thank you.
because it's actually within the space you are in. Now, the first thing to decide is what sort of price do you want? And I'm not talking about the number here. I'm talking about there are several. One is free, right?
Yes.
Free always has its appeal, but it also has its limitations. But that's a thing. The other is setting a specific price and saying, this is the price, take it or leave it, come rain or thunderstorms. It's $89 for half an hour, or it's $3,000 for half an hour, or it's $4. It doesn't matter. There's a price and you either pay it or you don't, and that's non-negotiable, and don't even ask. Or you set a price, which is common practice, because you want to seem like you're expensive, but in reality, you're a little bit more flexible. So you say it costs 300 an hour or per session, but when they write you and say, wow, I don't have it, then 50 is fine. That's also a way of doing it. The tricky thing is that it's daunting to write to somebody who said, I'd like you to pay me $300 for a session, and say, how about 50? Because you don't know if they're going to feel insulted.
Exactly.
Or if they're going to say, that's great, right? So that's a tricky place to be. Or you could say, you choose the price, or choose between options, right? One of the things at the College of Extraordinary Experiences, we have 3 prices people can choose. There's a 2,700 euro ticket, there's a 5,400, and there's an 8,100, and you get the same thing.
Wow.
And people ask, why would I pay more than the cheapest one? We say, well, if you feel you can afford it, you're making it possible for somebody who can't. And then some of them say, great, give me the cheapest one. Ha ha ha, you guys are silly. But most of them say, let me think. No, I think I can afford the middle one. Or, yeah, oh, that's really nice. I can only afford the cheap one. Or, great, I love that. I can afford the most expensive one. Really nice of you to be transparent. There's nothing that says you can't do that. There's nothing that says if you'd like to get paid, what's an amount you'd like to get paid for a session? Just top of your head. Don't overthink it. What's an amount that would make you think, yeah, for one coaching session?
How long is the coaching session?
Oh, is that relevant? Then just make it much longer.
Hour. I would say $50 for an hour.
Okay, let's say it's an hour. Let's say it's an hour. $50 for an hour. Good. So that means if you think $50 for an hour would be nice, then you could say, I charge $50 for an hour of coaching, but I also, if you are of limited means, then you can choose the $30 option instead, and that's only for those of limited means. Choose it if you feel,
right,
I'm not going to check your text statements or whatever. I'm going to trust you, but if you choose 30, then it's because you're saying, hey, 50 is too much. You can also choose 75, and 75, you're getting the same thing, but that allows me to do more work for people who have less money. Or you can choose the standard, which is 50, because now you're suddenly a coach that charges between 30 and 75.
That is an incredible approach to that. It's almost where I think of restaurants that are in that mindset of building community, but still needing to be financially like sustainable. Let's have a lunch on a Saturday and you give what you can. Right. And not, they always have income coming in because not everybody is going to want it for free, because they know that there's a value to it.
Bingo.
Wow. That is incredible. That excites me.
It's an easy way to test it, right? Because you could even you could even say you have 4 prices, right? There's the 75, there's the 50, there's the 30, and then there's, for those of you who really could use help but simply don't have any money, then it's donate what you can. And if you end up after doing that and you get in 100 coaching clients and they all pay $5, then you may need to limit how many of those. Then you may need to write, I don't have any more donation spaces. But as long as you're actually also okay with 30, the trick is never choose something that won't make you okay with it. If somebody chooses 30 because that's what they can afford, or they feel that's what they want to pay, and you're thinking 30, you cheapskate, what are you even wasting? Then it's too low, right? If anything lower than 50 makes you mad or doesn't make sense, then have 50 be the minimum. Then have it be 50, 80, 100. That's also an option. Just never choose, when you're making the choice, don't choose something that won't make you happy because you're in control. Let them choose. It's like on the buyer side, if they get these options and they choose the most expensive one and then they hate you for it, that's also stupid.
Yes, agreed.
So only choose options you're comfortable with. And if you're comfortable with 30 and you're thinking, okay, I'd like them to pay 50, but 30 is actually pretty nice. I'm starting out and I can always say no. And it means I can get to impact some more people. Well, then put 30 as that cheap option. Say, I'd like 50, but 30 is okay. And if you could afford it, let's do 75. But if 30 is not enough, if you need 35 before you feel valued, then let it be 35. Because you're right now defining. You're making it a choice for them that's easy. And that means you get to define. So don't define something that won't make you happy.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. That was really mind opening on the freedom and choice that I have, because I also feel like coaches as a society, we kind of see there's this structure that already exists and you have to follow this exact structure, and you're kind of going against the grain on, well, that's not how I want to do coaching. That doesn't align with my values. And yeah, I'm excited to try that. Another question I have along the lines of value and putting a monetary amount is the same thing with coaching, is offering courses, because maybe someone they're not in that space to have that one-on-one session with me, but I want to give them some information. How do I value that without giving away? I guess maybe in my head, it's like I'm giving away my coaching methodology and just giving it out there for free, and anyone can just use these free courses. Do I make them free? Do I charge? What does that look like? Or what could that look like? Because I mean, human to human connection is most effective, most impactful. But if a course is what they need to, or to get that information, to start processing what their life could be, what does that look like? What are your thoughts on that?
I think the first thing to be aware of, this is a thing most of us are not happy about, including myself. People don't care that much. Unless if Oprah Winfrey writes a one-page PDF and calls it Oprah's 7 tips for hosting a talk show, then there are millions of people who will read it and be inspired and care, and there are probably also some who will pay for it. Stacy and Klaus write Stacy and Klaus's tips for how to host a talk show, significantly fewer people will care. And that means that all these discussions about, oh, how do we price it? And what if should we get the PDF away, or do they have a course, or is it a video? And what about, is it $19? And no, it's at $79, or is it free? Or what if they give us our email, or all that sort of thing? It's spending a lot of time discussing a very little cake.
That makes sense.
My British friend, Lee Tove, his official title is he's a pie grower, and he works with growing the pie.
Okay. Okay.
And it doesn't matter what kind of pie it is. It's not physical pies, even though I think he'd be great at that too. He's a distinguished elderly English gentleman, so I think he'd bake great pies, but he works with growing pies. And one of the things about that is that if the pie is small enough, it doesn't matter that much how it's split. Where if the pie gets bigger, then it doesn't matter that much how it's split. And both of those lead to, let's grow the pie.
That makes sense.
Because if you're getting 2% or 3% of Coca-Cola's total stock, there's a big difference. But whether you're getting 2 or 3, you're still getting a insane amount of value. Where if you're getting 2 or 3% of this non-existent company that's starting up, 2 or 3% are both worth the same, probably not that much. And when it gets to be that much, then either 2 or 3% is going to be probably worth a lot. And yet people care so much about whether it's 2 or 3%, while it's small and they can control it, instead of thinking, how do we make it big?
Yes.
And I've seen that with startups, especially, that founders can have all these, oh, but when we then have the fourth founding run and bring in these people, do they get 8% or 12%? It's like, yes, it feels like it matters, but it doesn't. What matters is, do you get to that fourth funding run where you want 50 million investor dollars, or do you not? And do you end up with 26% as a main founder, or 32 or 19 or 14? Sure, it makes a difference, but the real difference is it a $100 million company, or is it a $10,000 company?
That makes sense. And for me, it applied where, I'm giving the value that I can put into not putting a price on it. Like, there was so much freedom when you said that, and my mind was like, well, if I don't have to put a price on it, I can show value, and that can be impactful for their life, and I never even have to see it. And that's okay, because it's so purpose driven that doesn't matter. It literally can be free. Like, it so much of my mental space was thinking about, how do I price this? And if it's really that small a piece of the pie, what does it matter? So yeah, that really resonated with me.
Yeah.
I can even use that to show the value of how this process works and how I see coaching. And maybe they take that away and it impacts their life and they make changes. That's awesome. That makes me feel great. That, for me, that's success. That's how I can say success.
And then whether it costs $44 or $3 or 120, of course, this makes
Yeah.
a difference in people's lives and also in yours. Doesn't right now. And the next thing is that even if you say right now, okay, we're going to do this workshop, it's going to cost $800 for 2 days. Okay, well, then it worked or it didn't. Well, it doesn't have to cost that next time.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't have to, it's not static. If you're doing something and it's small, then you are incredibly nimble and can change fast whether it works or not. If you're saying, we're going to order 10,000 copies of our new coaching book framework and we're going to sell them, then it matters whether you sell them at $6 or at 18 or at 49. It matters a lot. But if you're right now, it's about finding that one person or that 10 people, they're not going to make you rich. They're not going to make you poor. You could even go out. I'm not saying you should, but you could even go out and say, hi, I'm running these coaching workshops, and instead of paying for them, I'm going to pay you to attend, because the people I want here are the people who need help in their lives, maybe because of trauma, and they have time, but they don't have money. And I'm targeting that demographic. So not only is it free, I will actively pay you to be here. There's only 10 spots, because can you afford $20? Of course you can afford $20. You've got a day job, you've got a life, you could easily, $20 is not going to make or break anything for you. But if you tell somebody they get $2 to show up, it's probably not going to make or break for them, but it's going to be a completely different experience than if you say they have to pay $2. Even if those dollars are not a lot, it's saying, I want to help you, and I'll even pay you to be there because it's for those who can't afford it.
Yeah.
And I'm putting my money where my mouth is, literally.
No.
Now, can you keep on doing that if you get 1,000 of them a year? Then it's suddenly a little bit more. But when you're in the experimental phase, then you can do some pretty crazy stuff, because if it fails, you change and move on. If it works, well, then you can still change and move on, or you can copy it.
Absolutely. When you said like a demographic, or like your population or target population, that made me think about another question I had for you. Is, how you can go on social media and you see someone selling a program and they're like, hey, you get this for free, and you sign in and you see the content and they're like, give me your email, and then they spam email you.
I hate that.
I don't want to have to do that. I don't want to do that. What is the best way to outreach and like communicate your value on these platforms of social media? How do you do that without that annoying unsubscribe because you get emails all day long, or that you feel like you got tricked because they're like, I offer this for free, and then at the end we'll put your email in and then we'll email it to you, and then there's an offer in there like, please buy our product? What is the best way to not have that? I don't want that associated with me.
The best way to not do it is to not do it. And the second best way to do it is to realize that while America, the United States of America, has brought many great things to the world, it has also brought many not so great things. And one of the things that is not so great is this model,
Yes.
the bullshit model. And so many people hate it, but it works and it's effective. But I don't think anybody likes it. They like the results of it. A lot of people live with it. It's like buying a bike where the wheels are both punctured. You can still ride it, and if there are no other bikes available, people are going to ride it, but they'd prefer if it wasn't that way. So the best way to do it is to just not do it. Not because it's not effective.
Yeah, it's very effective. I know it's effective, but I don't want to do that. So what other options are there?
There are many things that are effective in this life that we choose not to do because of who we are. This is just one of them. Just don't do it. And if you do it, if you do something like that, be transparent. The problem isn't the salespeople. It's the lack of transparency. I had somebody, I saw their video and I thought, oh, okay, this is a sales trainer. He might know some tricks. And if I just learn one thing, that's great. And then I clicked and I wanted to buy the thing. And the video that was telling me you want to buy more stuff from me, after I paid, I said, I want the thing, just send it to me so I can learn something that's great. And then the video of the guy talking about, and I thought, then there's an intro video, and I thought, okay, I'll listen to the intro video. And he just kept on talking and talking and talking about how great it was, and how he never got to the thing I actually had bought.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up spending half an hour writing angry emails to them about how I not only wanted out of there, hello, we've written to you again, but also how they'd wasted my life on this, and that I wasted more of it. Don't be me.
Yeah.
Don't spend that time on it, but definitely don't be them.
That makes sense. Yeah, that gives me a different approach on how to do it, because I mean, that's just how we see it. That's what we see. It's what we experience. And I too have had so much frustration where, oh, this seems like something I could learn. Like, even if I just learned that one thing, it was not time wasted. And you're clicking through and it's buy this, upgrade this. And there's so much consumerism in that's a whole nother conversation that makes me like upset.
Yes.
So yeah, absolutely don't do it. But what would be, I almost want to say I didn't care about the effectiveness. I just don't want to be that. I don't want to be associated with that. I would rather be completely transparent. This is the value. This is what it's going to be. And just be straight and upfront. And if that's not as effective, I'm okay with that. I want my bike to not have punctures in the tire.
Bingo. And then if you can't get to ride it, or nobody wants any trips on borrowing your bike, then you say, okay, fine, then it stays in the garage, but there's still a sign there. And that's going to be the last thing I say before we do a little bit of rounding off, is that you want to help people design their life. Use design thinking. And one of the first places where things go wrong when it comes to design is people who forget that something is designed by somebody and they're just following the script, right? Do you need to know somebody before you get married? No, but a lot of people do it. And if you go back a little bit of time, then the standard was different. In some parts of the world, it's still different, right? Do you need to get paid to do a job? No, but a lot of us like to get paid. Do you need to have a website to sell a thing? No, but you can. Like all these sorts of, whenever you get to a space and then you think, I don't like this, then ask yourself, well, do I need to do it that way? And usually the answer is no. Because you're an entrepreneur, and you're an entrepreneur that's not bound by money yet, or maybe never. And that means that you can basically answer no to anything you don't want. Anything where you think, but that's the way it's done, then take a look in the mirror and says, is our company called By Design? Maybe we challenge this one. And it's not only going to help you be more true to yourself, which is your real success metric, but it's also going to help you stand out and be part of your brand, which is about design. So it's also a good business case.
Wow. Yes. Well stated. Well stated. And I really, I enjoy the authentic success. Like if I'm being authentic, that's my measure of success.
Yes. And there's so many places in life where we have to compromise because of things. And here you've managed to position you in a space where you don't need, yes, you need to compromise on time because you have limited amounts of that, but there are some things where you don't need to compromise. And that is a huge advantage. So with that, Stacey, I'm going to say, first of all, I'm going to say thank you for coming to me and sharing your challenge with a stranger and being coached.
Yes.
As you know, that's not nothing, and that's tricky. So that takes courage. And not only me, also sharing it with the world out there. Thank you for that. I'm pretty sure that there are people who will listen in and think, I recognize some of that. So thanks for inspiring just by being here. The second is I want you to think for a moment and I want you to share 3 things that you take away from our conversation. And they can be insights or actions or provocations, or they don't even have to be positive, but 3 things you take away from our 45 minutes together.
My measurement of success and the freedom that I have in it's not a choice. There isn't, I can be authentic, and that's my measurement of success. And that opens up so many doors. Also, that I am ultimately in control of how my message and brand is delivered to the world and how I can create that all on my own. And I can choose to ride that bike that doesn't have any punctures in it, and that's okay. And also that there is a lot of power and value in having a coach. And I think being here really resonated with me that you're a tremendous coach, and coaches need coaches, and having someone else to empower you is not a weak thing. It's a strong thing. And so I want to walk away with that. So, and thank you also for your time and your insights. They are completely valuable. And this is just going to keep flowing where you put time in, I put time in, and ultimately that will affect other people in their life and have most impactful and better community and better life, better the world, because Wonder Woman in disguise here.
See, that's not the worst, right? That's a pretty good Wonder Woman in disguise, better world. I think that's hard to top. So we're going to end on that and say to all of our listeners out there, thank you for listening in. This has been the Innovation Coaching Podcast. You've heard Stacey Drake and me, your host, Klaus Hostel. Thank you for listening.